at this time, we are really watching social norms and the basic decorum changing before our eyes in real time. In this period where, where the social distancing has not only become a regular occurrence, but an integral part, essentially, of our daily conversations, making it even more for all of us to confront one of the most enduring features of this situation, which is this need to deal with our mental health and mental well-being and mindset, which can be a game changer in creating a pathway through this particular situation and any challenge, essentially, that we might face in life, and building that solid foundation for growth as we move beyond the situation onwards. So when it comes to achieving and overcoming and persevering through our careers and ultimately lives, why is it that some people reach their career goals or whatever goals they've set for themselves despite uncertainty, and others do not? So this is the questions we're going to be answering. And to give you an idea, of individuals who actually achieve their goals and reach their potential typically encounter and adapt to continuous change, because change is their opportunity for growth. As with this situation, or again, any challenging situation you might experience in life, we can either see it as an opportunity for growth and develop that growth mindset, or to come out stronger and better in the long term, or we can let it drive our narrative moving forward. The choice is ours here. So we have about 30 to 40 minutes of content available to you guys, and we will be asking you questions throughout the session. We also encourage you to ask us questions as well. We're going to look at growth mindset. We're going to look at how do you actually, what does our brain have to do with all of this as well, and how do we actually design that growth mindset? How do we overcome the obstacles to that growth mindset? And then finally, what are the steps somebody needs to take to actually make change stick, implement new habits, remove bad habits, implement new routines that actually make the change stick and make us and drive us in life. And yes, the recording will be available. Somebody asked me about the recording, so let me also just awesome. All right, so now that you know a little bit about the topic, let us also introduce ourselves. So we'll come on camera, we'll say hello to you guys. Hello, hello. So my name is Elena Agaragimova. I am a managing partner at Bessern Enterprise. So prior to joining Bessern, actually, I was working in various organizations and institutions around the US, as well as the UAE. I come from a background of higher education, academics, and learning and development in recent years. So it was a career that, it was a hobby actually that turned into a career and now a business. And I enjoy topics of personal development and professional development, and this is actually what I teach for corporates at the moment. So I deliver sessions like soft skills leadership sessions to corporates around the Middle East and in different parts of the world, helping people essentially thrive and perform at work. And as I said, I enjoy these topics so much that I write about them. I write them about Forbes Middle East and Arabian Business, various other publications in the Middle East and globally, wherever I can share this knowledge. Super excited to be here with you. This is a topic that's close to my heart. This is a topic that I learned a long time to implement and to study and to research, and looking forward to sharing some of these tips and strategies with you guys on things that actually work. So, and Ivan?
Hello, everyone. So my name is Ivan. I have a background in engineering. So for many years, I have thought that intensity is what makes people succeeding at work. So engineers, in principle, they're very analytical, they modelize everything. So I believe that if I do something and I do it hard, I'm going to succeed, whatever I put in front of me. I have been working in corporate for many years, close to 18 years, which made me understand that it is not always the case that when you put intensity in everything you do, you succeed with your personal goals or your working goals. This is something, it's a topic that became like a passion 10 years ago, and I went a little bit further in terms of understanding what are the things in the brain that makes you succeed. In fact, what are the typomorphic processes that makes that the brain can adapt and quickly be successful. And this is something that we are going to be discussing today. In fact, always it's going to be a mix between the practice, our personal experiences, together with the brain science that we have been deeply, myself and Elena, we have been deeply reading and practicing during all these years in order to help people thrive or enrich their goals. So welcome for today. Elena, we can start.
Yes. All right. Whoops, hit the wrong button. There you go. All right. We'll come back in just a moment as well, but let us share with you a couple of slides. So one of the things we want to kind of set the to kind of kick us off. An important thing here is to understand how the brain works. So our brain, and this might be give a bad rap, and Yvonne, I know you don't like it when I say it, but the brain is lazy in a sense. So, and this might give it a negative view, but in fact, brain is lazy. Why do I say that? Is because when the brain is there to protect us, we have the fight or flight mode that we go into. Change for the brain essentially is an effort. And this is where, if some of you might, maybe you can relate to this and drop me a message if you can. When you are driving from home to work or work to home, and sometimes you look back and you're like, I have no idea how I arrived at this destination. Does this happen to anybody? Or maybe you're doing something out of routine and that's something that perhaps you come across, right? So this is actually the part of the brain that this happens in, is this unconscious or subconscious. So 95% of actions that we do each day is actually automatic. And that is actually the thing that drives us forward, because routines and habits keep our brain at ease, right? Because if we keep repeating the same things over and over again, it doesn't require a lot of effort from our brain, and our brain is there to protect us, to preserve the energy. So how do we break through that when we start looking into creating new habits? Because that can potentially be quite difficult. And this is where behavioral science really comes into play, and the knowledge and research which we're going to share with you from behavioral science and neuroscience of how do you actually implement this change. And part of the trick is to create new routines. And in order for us to, you know, let go of that unconscious and really kick in our conscious and start creating these habits, there's a process that needs to take place. And this is where we're going to be tricking the brain, and this is a step-by-step that we're going to be sharing with you guys throughout this webinar. Yvonne, I feel you want to tell me something.
Elena, you were right. I was going to jump when you say the brain is lazy. But in fact, if we want to understand what is happening, is that most of our brain, more than 95% of our brain, is storing a lot of routines that have been created mainly from the age of 0 to 7 years old, and is formatting constantly the brain with a process of things that we learn from others, lessons that we have been learning from our parents, our surroundings. So our subconscious is the part of the brain where we are constantly storing this type of information, and that is why, in fact, change is very difficult, because the routines that have been created for so many years are already taking a space of our subconscious. And this is what makes that the brain has it very difficult to find out new things that come to our brain and store them. So it's almost like the brain needs to restore the new routines that are happening constantly in order to find a space inside of our subconscious. So it's not lazy, it is just the fact that it's dominated by a lot of things that we have learned for so many years. Thus, change is difficult. Thus, there is a production of new molecules that are saying, that is sending signals in our brain saying change is equal to, is something that could imply fear in our brain.
Absolutely. And somebody also shared, Ursula shared that the driving from home to work definitely happened today when she was driving, and suddenly she found herself in the parking space at home without even realizing it. So it's definitely something we can all relate to, and something that happens to all of us. All right. So another part important to keep in mind here, now that we kind of set that understanding, just a little bit of how the brain works, because I think this is the challenge with many people when we're looking to change habits, is that we think it's simple, and in fact it's not. And part of it is to trick the brain, right? So, and to have this eye-opening and insights of how our brain actually works, to make it so we can make it easier for it to make this change. So when it comes to any change, we might not always be able to control the outcome, but we can control our response to it. And that's essentially growth mindset and resilience. And that's another part we want to discuss today. So it actually gives you the tools to bounce back from tough situations and thrive in whatever challenges you might be facing. And growth mindset is our ability to improve and also our belief that we can actually improve. So as you can see on this slide, the first start when we're talking about growth mindset, when we're looking to implement any change, when we're looking at our current routines, our current habits, first we need to believe that we can change, we can implement this new thing, that you can get smarter, you can get faster, you can actually do the things that you've set yourself to do. And for those of you who might not have heard of growth mindset before, actually it was developed by Dr. Carol Dweck. So she coined this term, fixed mindset and growth mindset, to describe the underlying beliefs that people have about learning and intelligence. So when people believe they can get better and understand that effort actually makes them stronger, they will put in the extra time and effort, and that will essentially lead to higher achievements. So this is something to keep in mind as we are moving forward. And as we go through this, I will also be sharing with you how do you actually implement the growth mindset and how do you remove obstacles to growth mindset.
Elena, if I just may add, in fact, the brain is very particular because he doesn't recognize between reality and fiction. So the more, in fact, we help him believe, so our goal, or we are constantly repeating what we want to do in life, the more it generates the new reality of our brain. It generates molecules that are constantly communicating pleasure or an image that is positive, so that our behaviors become the new reality. So it's almost like, and that makes me think about something that we were discussing not so long time ago, that the brain sometimes, for instance, if we take the example of pain, when we are in a relationship and we break up with this relationship and we feel bad about it, in fact, it feels a pain that is almost close to real and is equivalent, according to research, to having a small crush in a car. So the brain cannot distinguish between reality and fiction. So that this is something that we can use, in fact, that we can leverage in order to create this growth mindset by constantly having this image of positivity of what we want to succeed, and constantly repeating to ourselves this goal that we want to achieve, so that it becomes reality.
Absolutely.
So a lot of people believes that motivation is more than enough in order to succeed what we want to achieve. But if we think about it, how many times we have wanted to lose weight, spend more time in the family, spend less time in social media, and even though we wanted it badly, we were not capable of succeeding. So in fact, there is a research done by Stanford professor called Beji Fox, and this guy have deconstructed what drives any change or any decision that we take in life. So first of all, he discovered that motivation is not enough, because the more chances there is to accomplish the behavior, there is he has noticed that motivation is inconsistent, and we become easily discouraged by the effort. So we cannot count on motivation. The second thing that he found out that was quite important in order to change is the ability. But let me explain you a bit about the ability. Is to be able to perform a change of behavior, which means is that if a behavior is super difficult to be achieved, it has less chances to happen. If the behavior is easy to achieve, it has higher chances to happen for us. Comparison is like, for instance, if we decide to the behavior that we want to do is to go to the gym every day for at least 1 hour, have an instructor who is going to help us, is something that is more difficult than saying, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to go to push-ups and leave. This is something that is quite easy because it doesn't take so much effort and it doesn't take so much time. So when we compare these two actions, in fact, the easier action has higher chances of success. The third thing that, in fact, that he has discovered is that people needs to have a trigger. It's almost like a small Outlook reminders, but it's not exclusively that. We have different type of triggers. One of the is the biological triggers, which says sometimes give us information about, oh, we are hungry, so we need to eat. In real life, in fact, in order that an action happens, we need to have something that will remind us to take this a small action. So motivation is part of the game, but is by far not the thing that makes things happen. Then there is the ability, making it so small, the effort, so that it is possible to do it at any time. And then we need a trigger. So if we click, and we are going to see a little bit of a comparison, like between two actions. For instance, if you decide, I want to balance my time, my time between work and private. I want to have a better balance. This is something that you have a high motivation, but in the story itself, there is it might seem hard to be done because it seems abstract. If we compare it with the second point, the number 2 red dot that you see in the graph is, for instance, a simple action, like saying, I'm going to start blocking a daily private time in my work calendar. This is an action that will take potentially a few seconds to do. It blocks your calendar. It makes it easier to be done because you have the trigger, because in the calendar you are going to have the information of saying you need to block, you need to spend some time with some private time, and it's going to be easier to be done. So in this behavioral model, in fact, it says that if you make it easy, you chunk it out, the goal that you want to achieve into small pieces, it is, and you have the possibility to have something to remind you, things are going to happen. And this is the funny thing about the brain, is that the brain doesn't like big changes. When you do big changes, there is the production of molecules of fear that will stop you or motivate you, will play with your motivation. So the main idea about the behavioral model is that it is possible to design habits that are going to produce results. It is possible to play with it, with the information that we have regarding how the brain functions, in order that changes happen. And it's not about intensity, but it's more about consistency, which means that these small actions, if you do them repeatedly, it will become a routine, a little bit like the example that Elena gave with driving the car, and you will not even think about it. When the brain starts thinking about it, this is where you are going to start having fears that is made to protect you, and will make that your motivation is going to be a little bit more volatile. So
Ivan,
let's talk. Yes.
Interesting is that actually I have a relevant example. I was just talking with a client yesterday, and you know, you're so completely right. And I mean, you and I, we implement these sort of things in our lives and with our clients, so we know it works. But it's always, but before we got into the research, right, years ago when we started looking into all of this, we were also looking and say, could it be that simple? Could it be that simple that we just achieve things by just making it a little bit easier? And in fact, it is. So, and yesterday I was talking to a client, and he was looking to do different kind of career change, but then he was also looking to, you know, perhaps maybe start a DBA, maybe start to change region. So he was looking at so many changes at the same time. And actually this sort of things actually applies to not only habit creation, but also any kind of change that one can go through, because the more difficult, the more harder the abilities to do any change, the more time, and actually not time, it will kill your motivation even just at the beginning, because you're overwhelming yourself. And that was the case with this gentleman, and it's the case with so many people that I work with, and that was the case with me as well when I was looking to, you know, get more on a healthier path. And I said I'm going to change everything at the same time, and it doesn't work, because indeed when the ability is hard to do, even you're so motivated to do it, it's all about small steps but consistency. This is what gets you results, is consistency. And a final point here before we move on to the next slide is this will actually help you practice the growth mindset, because one of the obstacles to growth mindset, so if you're sort of saying, yes, I really want to change, but there's some things that might be stopping you, from studies we know that usually these things have to do with fear of failure. So when we set really huge goals for ourselves and we're afraid to fail, we're afraid to even take a first step. So fear of failure is a real thing, and by taking those small bites, as Yvonne mentioned, and by taking those small pieces and staying consistent with it, you will minimize the fear of failure significantly. And on top of that, you will also remove inertia. So inertia is another blocker to growth mindset, and it's that thing when you have this big plans and you know you want to do something, but you can't seem to make it happen, which I'm sure many of us can relate to. So this is, maybe you want to learn a new skill, maybe you never got around to signing up for a course, maybe you have this long to-do list that you never check off. So, and one of the biggest steps to overcome this inertia is by cutting it into small slices. So, and the side effect from all of this is it will actually build confidence as well, because as you're achieving those small bites and you see progress, you will feel more motivated and more confident in your ability to do what you set for yourself to do. But when in fact we overwhelm ourselves with to-do lists or with big goals that stay nowhere but in our minds, because we have the fear of failure, we have the inertia, right? And we have lack of confidence to actually pursue those goals. That is what we want to avoid. So, and we'll tell you exactly what the steps to take in just a couple of slides. Yvonne?
Oh, just I was thinking about the famous New Year's wishes that we put, that we want to lose weight, we want to do this, and in fact, research shows that 5% of whatever is committed the first day of the year is actually happening.
Exactly.
This is great. So many, you said it right. In fact, only this simplicity is quite amazing. In fact, but it's only recently that a lot of research has been done on the topic of neuroscience in order to understand what are the implications inside of the brain regarding change. And only 5 years ago, there is a lot of books that have been published all around, and has made it a little bit where they have done the correlation between there is this type of chemical reaction in this part of the brain, and this is what actually happens in terms of behaviors. So it has become more practical. The science behind that is it started with neuroscience, and now the way of putting it out there to the masses is called the habit creation. Many books, and in fact, we have got a lot of debates with Elena about our favorite books that we also recommend. In fact, to understand the principles of habit creation is, for me, for instance, Atomic Habits is one of the best. The second one would be more Bejifolk, because through his initial research, I could understand a little bit further, in fact, what is the correlation between the scientific parts of his research and the actual behaviors that he has put in practice with a lot of research with many people. But so you have the possibility now, in fact, to learn how to either create a new habit or get rid of bad habits that you have currently, which is quite amazing.
Absolutely. So before we actually go in and tell you the step-by-step, first of all, I see some of you raising your hands. So please go ahead and drop us a message in the chat box or in the questions to let us know if you have a question, if you're just agreeing and high-fiving what we're saying, which is also great. But I want to ask you guys, so we have different backgrounds and different profiles of individuals on this webinar. I'm curious if somebody can share, just maybe a few people can share, what are some habits you're looking to implement? What are some things maybe you're struggling with as you're looking to implement these new habits or a growth mindset? So what are some things that you guys are, some things that you want to maybe make a change in? Just go ahead and drop us a note in the chat or in the question box.
So while people are typing, I just wanted to summarize the simplicity of the brain, and which is makes it quite impressive that a lot of years of research were needed, in fact, to come up with the basic principles. So we have a reptilian part of our brain, and it's basically an on and off. Seeking pleasure and avoiding pain are the big drivers of decisions in our brain. So the second principle is about the brain has constant glasses, which means that reality and imagination, what we can imagine, any positive image or feelings that we can have in our brain can become, he will not distinguish between if it is real or not. And the third thing is that in order to store changes in our behaviors, we need to create small routines so that this information goes and becomes automatic inside of our subconscious. Three basic principles that we are going to be, in fact, going through in the next slides.
Yes, and we have a really great comments coming in. So Yvonne, I'm just going to read them out to you so we can all hear them as well. So one is how to overcome negative thoughts. Also, we have a couple of people that are looking to exercise on a daily basis and struggling with things such as lack of space, time, family interruption. Also change of routine to include exercise and self-care. I love it. Working from home also has been challenging for someone. You have to deal with family and work at the same time, especially as a new mother. So I want to be productive with both work and house chores, giving time for myself physically and mentally. We have trying to expand my stock portfolio during the recession. And also somebody's asking, can you tell us more about brain and imagination? We will. And it's something that is easy to start but difficult to maintain. Learning new skills, beautiful. So I think these next few slides is going to be really interesting for all of you, so that have asked these questions, and we'll address each of them as well. So let's kick this off then. And this by the way, I want you guys to know that this is the things that you guys are sending to us is what we hear from clients and from people on the webinars that we do continuously. And also somebody says tricks to focus on work if you can. Listen, this is something I've recently learned in just the last couple of years, is to avoid multitasking, actually focus on productivity and being focused. So definitely we'll be sharing some things that are helpful. All right, let's get this.
So I stay there. Yeah, this is perfect. So you remember that I was mentioning this about this principle that the brain has constant glasses, reality and imagination is the same. So in order to create new behaviors, the first thing that you need to do is to create a vision. And when I say a vision, it is not like a corporate vision or an organization vision. It's an image of what you want to achieve. It's almost like having a trailer of a movie inside of your head, imagining the colors, the movement, the dynamics, even the feelings that it makes you be. It's almost like observing yourself with other people surrounded by nature or by any environment, and have this image, create this image in your head. For instance, and I'm going to relate it to the question about the negativity. So what is exactly that you want to achieve during the next 6 months? Create this vivid image with people around you. How would it be your life without this negativity? What type of feelings you would have? Are you smiling? Pay attention to the smile. Pay attention about the observation that you are having in this image, in this trailer that you want to create. So what you are doing, and it seems so simple, it is to create an image that is going to be stored in your brain, and that when this image you bring it back, in fact, it produces positivity. in reality, the brain is producing pleasure dopamine, which is saying, oh, I have pleasure every time that you bring that image to my brain. And that is going to encourage your brain to continuously bring back this image. And that is going to condition your behaviors in order that it goes towards that direction. So first thing to do in order to create new behaviors is to create a picture, a trailer, a movie that you are going to be storing in your head. So, and the other thing is that let's post-rationalize it. Why do you want that vision? So why, if you have this image, what is going to happen to your life? So you need to understand the reason why that vision is so important for you. So there is a picture and there is a rational reason behind that you need to store in your brain. So this is only to set up the scene. In the next slide.
Sure, and one thing I want to also add here is that, you know, just as and we hear a lot of this, Yvonne, actually we hear a lot of this in, you know, positive thinking, and you should imagine these things, but you know, from the research that we do and from, you know, these books that we study, it is a proven fact that your mind, as you mentioned, right, your mind does not distinguish between imagination and reality. And if you think about it, everything around you, the computer, this, you know, maybe a cup of water, somebody has imagined it first, right? And so imagination is very powerful in the way it impacts our brain, and this has been proven as well. So it's, although there's a lot of talk about it, there's actually science behind it now. So it seems very simple, yet you can imagine how powerful it will be if you actually apply it and try it. And the next steps here, after you kind of set that scene, is to look at preparing the right positive message or the growth mindset. So this is where you need to tell yourself that, for example, those of you who said, you know, in addition to having that image of how you would feel like when you get in shape or when you start exercising regularly, right? Or when you start having those positive thoughts, actually writing that down and telling yourself, I will feel ... you fill in the blank, or when I begin exercising, or when I'm exercising, I will feel ... So creating those constant messages around you that you can have access to, right? So, and this helps because it's a continuous reminder, because again, we are on autopilot majority of the time, and if you don't remind yourself and you don't set that really clear vision and that you can review daily to get you to your goal, you might slip up and forget about it. So all these small steps really count, and they really matter, and they're small and tiny, but they go a long way. So make sure you prepare with the right message and actually believing. So growth mindset, if you remember, is actually believing that we can achieve what we've set ourselves to achieve, right? That no matter what it is, that you can get there, right? So we have that image, and for those of you who might be skeptical and say, well, yes, but then, you know, what if in fact there's a lot of obstacles? You will find that out, and you'll be able to tackle those obstacles as you set that vision, because when you set that vision and then you have that further vision, you break it down into small achievable steps, you'll quickly realize where there might be obstacles, so then you can address those obstacles or change course as you need to. But the idea here is continuous effort and consistency that will lead you to your results. And we're not saying it's going to be a smooth one-line journey. It might go up and down and sideways and backwards, but the idea here is to continue and getting closer to your goals. So so belief here is very important. And for those of you who wanted to talk about starting exercising, what I can tell you is what we know from studies is that linking it to an existing habit and kind of start to stack those habits is what works well. Let me give you an example what I mean by that. Let's say you wanted to start exercise. A few of you said about exercising or about having that little bit of private time, right? So what you can do is you can link it to an existing habit. And for those of you who said, no, I don't have many habits, which I've had this before, I'm sure you do. We all have routines and habits. Even if our day looks a little bit different, there is something you do every single day. Some of us do more habits than others, but there is something you can find. So find that thing that you do every day. For example, brushing your teeth. All of us brush our teeth. So this is a habit that you do daily, or maybe you have that cup of coffee, right? So you can tie in whatever you're looking to implement with an existing habit. So if it's exercising, if you, let's say you never exercised before and you just want to start with, you know what, I'm just going to start with 10 sit-ups or 10 push-ups. After you finish brushing your teeth, you just drop and you do 10 push-ups or 10 sit-ups, whatever works for you. And you do it continuously until it becomes so automatic that then you say, you know what, maybe today I can do 20, or maybe today I'm going to go for a walk. You need to set what works for you and how, you know, what, depending on where you are in terms of physical well-being. If, let's say, you're looking to implement more you time, so me, or more reading time, this is where you can tie in with a cup of coffee. This is something I've learned to do. Is I know that after I have my breakfast, I'm definitely going to sit and have a cup of coffee. It's a ritual for me. And as I'm getting my cup of coffee, I also know that it's now time to read. And I time myself and I spend about 15 to 20 minutes reading every morning, updates, news, etc. So this is something. Ivan, you want to say anything, any examples you have from habits?
So I just wanted to highlight that it makes approximately 12 or 13 months, in fact, that I'm in my routine of habits. I'm someone, in fact, who hates going to the gym, and I know I have to take care of myself. So at the beginning, in fact, I started linking the little habit of doing 40 push-ups every morning. 40 push-ups takes me less than 1 minute, let's say. And I was linking it to the fact that it's going to be while I was preparing my coffee, which is something that is a routine when I wake up in the morning. Nowadays, in fact, I have discovered that it's even more effective to link it to the routine of touching my mobile, because I have this tendency of going to the mobile just to check social media. So I say to myself, just before touching the mobile, I need to do these bloody 40 push-ups. So I have linked it to a routine that I have at hand. And in fact, no one has to start with 40 push-ups. 40 push-ups, I know a lot of people are laughing about it, that is so small, but there are some people who start with 2 push-ups. And this is something that you have to consider, is that in order to be successful at creating habits, you need to start somewhere. Waiting for having the Serbian coach preparing you in the gym is going to be tough, and maybe the effort is going to kill your motivation. And this is what really defines how you design the habits. You have to create them so small. We call it the first chunk, that it almost makes you laugh. If it is about negativity, and this is something that is quite dear for me, because I have been for many years a master of negativity. I always see the worst case scenario about things. So the smallest habit that I can create is to allow myself to have negativity only for maximum 2 minutes per day. So I have the right to think about the worst case scenario, but only 2 minutes per day, nothing more. And it's subdividing, in fact, either the bad habit or the good habit that you want to create into smaller pieces, so that in the long run it creates like it benefits on the law of compound interest. The small little habits that you create, like for instance 10 days exclusively with 2 push-ups, the next 10 days, maybe if it is successful and you have been consistent and you have been able to reward yourself, then you increase it if you want, or maybe you change the type of exercise that you may want to do. But adding up these small little things are going to create the big changes. These tiny habits create the big changes that make you reach your goal.
You know, you mentioned a really important point is, you know, for those of you who are maybe having challenges with negative thinkings, which I can relate to. I spent majority of my life in negative mode, so which led me nowhere. So that's a story for a different day. But what I can tell you is that, Ivan, you mentioned a good point. That if we've been doing something for a long time, it's very difficult to just go cold turkey, right? It's very difficult to just stop doing something. It's for some people it may work, and all of a sudden, you know, you just have the shift and you stop negative thinking. But then you mentioned that, you know, maybe just lose less, you know, make it less time. So say, you know what, I'm going to spend only 10 minutes with negative thinking. Well, I'm going to spend only 10 minutes watching the news that might add to my negative thinking, right? So you don't need to go full on and just cut yourself off. but then what you're also doing is creating a new routine. So when we're talking about changing the mindset, then you can give that time to the negative thinking, but then you need to give double time to the positive things in your life. And that can be as simple as just, avoiding the news and watching something a little bit more positive, right? Or something that might be uplifting. So feeding your brain and or your mind, essentially, feeding your mind with those positive messages that we mentioned as well on the slide before. So this is something to keep in mind, absolutely. And you also mentioned about the kind of this couple of push-ups. And in fact, there's been many studies that's been done, and this is actually also mentioned in Nir Yale's book on Indistractable, is this is actually how you create habits. And you would be surprised how many people started with 2 push-ups or 2 sit-ups, or those who are looking to implement exercising or healthier eating, just eliminating, let's say, maybe a soda, or gaining or doing more water in your day, right? Like, I mean, drinking more water in your day. These small habits, once you actually do these small habits, you can then add to them. You can keep adding to them, and that makes it more consistent. Somebody asked about how do you develop consistent behavior. That is what makes consistent behavior, is small little bites. This is that works for most.
Elena, so if I may, in fact, the trick about having an awesome life would be to make it easier. These small, tiny habits that we want to create it, to make the way to the tiny habit, the positive tiny habit, positive, smooth, and the thing that we want to get rid of, like, for instance, watching social media too much or whatsoever, to make it a little bit more difficult. So the new habits that we want to build, when you design them, you have to create a sentence that describes what you're going to do, but also prepare so that it is very smooth to make this habit. And for the negative habits, it would be to make it even more difficult. It could be as simple as, the first thing that I do in the morning is reaching my mobile to check Facebook, put your mobile a little bit further away. It's just adding a little bit into the difficulty, and that produces that it's more difficult that the bad habit happens.
Absolutely. And the next step here is to look, and we've mentioned just a bit, but to look at the near future. So one of the challenges I see when I work with clients is that we have these ambitious and big plans, and we think so far ahead, and that again hits us in that inertia where we can't make a move because it's so big. And we look at how many things we need to get done in the next 6 months or 12 months, or whatever image we have in our mind, right? And this is really where the magic happens, is in those near future planning, for a few reasons, actually. Number one, as we've been discussing, these small daily habits is what's going to lead to results, but we don't want to go into 6 months of planning for these small habits, right? We want to just look at a couple weeks at a time, because as you're doing these things, you might say, you know what, I want to change my route, or you might say, maybe I need to adjust something, or maybe life will happen. So this way you still stay motivated. And also, a couple of weeks is a good time where you can look back at your calendar and you see that you've ticked yourself off every day. You've implemented this new habit every day. You did the 10 push-ups you said you were going to do, or every day you went for that 10-minute walk, or every day you are perhaps you thought more positive. When you do that in these small increments, you will be more motivated to keep going and be consistent, because you will see progress. Your mind will associate these steps with progress, and that's going to release a whole lot of good feel chemicals that will make you keep going. And another thing on this slide to mention is to avoid comparing ourselves to anybody else. Everybody progresses in their own time. So idea here is being better than you were yesterday. Just making that incremental small effort towards change. We're not comparing ourselves to somebody who is, all of a sudden running 5 kilometers every day, or somebody who is all of a sudden, they're writing these positivity quotes. No, we're just comparing at how much progress we have made from yesterday to the next day to the next day.
And in order to capture this progress, your brain needs to be aware about that there is some progress. And our suggestion is to do a small investment. And this small investment is to say, I will have a notebook where I'm going to capture every time that I succeed to create to accomplish the habit. You can see, in fact, in the example in the left, so this tracker would work like there is a line describing your habit. It is, for instance, every morning before opening my, looking at my mobile, I will do 40 push-ups. And then every time that every day that I'm doing it, I'm going to do a cross. And that is benefiting from something that the brain works actually quite well, which is the reward. And in fact, more and more apps in the are using, in fact, this pattern that when we are tracking something, we become happier or satisfied about ourselves, and we want to continue to do it further. I think, Elena, you have, for instance, this Apple Watch, where it's tracking how many steps or how far you have been walking, right? And you are constantly checking if you are reaching your target. So apps are using this principle of that in order to be able to continue a habit, you need to be able to track it every single day. So that's is going to be your investment. Writing it down, all of the habits that you want to create or to follow up during a month, and being able to track it. And every time that you succeed, like a milestone, oh, this is my first time that I succeed in 10 times in a row, I got a strike, 10 times in a row, I have been successful. Go and treat yourself. Go and, I mean, it could be as simple as looking at yourself in front of the mirror and saying how proud you are about yourself, or doing a little bit like me, in fact, that from time to time I need to reward myself with something that I love, which is sweets. I take a couple of sweets in order to reward myself every time that I do 10 times in a row a habit that I have been practicing for some time. So it is important to track every single day where you are accomplishing the habit.
Absolutely, and somebody also mentioned, it's a good example that she was told by her doctor to start drinking more water, so she started to refill her water bottle the night before and keep it for the next day every evening before she takes her vitamins. So that's an example of an existing habit, that if you want to drink more water and you know you have to take vitamins anyway, you make sure you have those 2, 1 liter bottles of water there, or keep them on your desk. For myself, I keep I aim to drink 3 liters of water every day, so I keep 2 bottles of 1.5 liters on my desk as reminders, and they're always there because I know I'm going to be at my desk. I know I'm going to be looking at my computer. So that's a really good example. And somebody also asked if about if some days the habit is skipped. So I'm going to cover this in the next slide. And this slide right here, we already touched base on many points here. So just to kind of summarize it here is, I just want to say that, and Ivan mentioned this, remove roadblocks. So if you did go into if you miss that day of incorporating that habit, or even maybe 2 days or even 3 days, this is where you need to look at what has caused you to not do that habit, right? So what was it, let's say you wanted to eat healthier and perhaps you had chocolates in the house and you couldn't stop yourself. Then the way to remove the roadblock is to remove chocolate, stop buying stuff for the house, right? And this works for me personally very well. So I've noticed that when I start having healthy snacks, I'm no longer tempted to actually eat anything bad, because if it's not easily accessible, I'm sure definitely not going to go to the store just to buy a piece of chocolate. So I usually just eat the healthy snack, and that satisfies my craving, and then I continue with my day. So leaving reminders as well. So leaving reminders and as a post-it, as a maybe for some of you on your calendars, whatever works for you is also something that you need to keep in mind. And final point as well about removing roadblocks is, if you're able to remove that roadblock, or if maybe a roadblock was you wanted to go to the gym in the morning but you woke up late, you need to review, why did you wake up late? Why did you go to sleep late? Perhaps did you not sleep well? etc. So really reflecting, and it's very simple to do, and it's very simple to recognize. All it needs is a few minutes of your reflection each day to see what has gone okay this today, what has not gone so great, where can you improve for tomorrow.
You know, the point about the roadblocks, it tied so well with the example that was mentioned by one of the attendants regarding the preparation of the water the night before. In fact, it's making it easier for him in the morning to reach this bottle, because he had already seen that there is a roadblock saying that if this water is not ready in the morning, I may not go and do what the habit that I want to create. So I'm already preparing things and removing the roadblock. And that is why, in fact, in designing your habits, it is not good to plan for the long term, because every design that you are running is almost like a beta test. What can I do in order that I don't fail anymore? So, and it's a recurrent learning approach where you are going to make it, even your habits are going to become better, removing roadblock, increasing the chances of success, so that you create habits that last and that can be accomplished for 100%. We humans are social animals. We need to be able to discuss in order to create the emotional reward for successfully achieving, or sometimes failing, on our road to success with the creation of habits. Partnering up with someone that you trust. It can be from your best friend, it can be someone that you trust as a mentor, to tell him, inform him about what you are doing and why, and maybe discuss about the feedback on how your design habit could be better. This is something that creates the recognition for your brain, the social recognition for your brain, that you are progressing in the fact of socially communicating with others what you are doing. Now, it is something already discussed, but I just want to highlight, it is okay to miss a step. What is not okay is that you don't find a way to remove the cause that made you miss the step. Was it because you overslept and you couldn't do your habit? Was it because 10 people at work were constantly interrupting? Whatever it is still under your control to say, how can I remove this barrier, this roadblock that is impeding me to be successful on this specific habit, who will make me happy, who is going to remind me of this image that produces growth mindset and achieving my major goals. So it is okay to miss, but it's not okay to don't have a learning on how can I do to remove that specific roadblock that made me miss the step.
Great. So that's these are the steps. So we have the setting of the scene, the planning, the action, and the actual budding up or having that partner. And maybe now we can also come on camera and also answer some of your questions. So what I want to address while Yvonne comes on, there you go. A couple of, for some of you who said the overcoming of negative thoughts. So we looked into that a bit, but if you still need a little bit more insights, what works really well is, number one, you need to ask yourself, is this thought true? So you need to address it and understand, is this true? Is what I'm telling myself? Because often our negative thoughts are usually something we're assuming or something that we are negatively thinking about something. So ask yourself, is this thought true? And if you feel it is, what makes it true? What does it make it a fact? What makes it a fact? So oftentimes we think negative things about ourselves that are not actually true. They are based on experience. We've had that one experience of failing on stage, for example. Maybe we didn't do a great presentation, or maybe we tried to get in shape and start exercising, we weren't able to. So now we think we're just not meant to get in shape, or we're not a good public speaker. It's not in fact true. It's just one experience. So address it. Is it true? Is it a fact? How do you feel when you have this thought? How would you feel if you didn't have this thought, right? What do the people around you see when you have this thought? How are you with other people when you have these thinking? So oftentimes you'll realize that a lot of thoughts that we're thinking are just assumptions and made up things in our mind that are not true. And by challenging them, you are eventually changing the way your mind thinks. And by switching them to something positive, to reframe that thought, even if you don't know how to do something, you say, I don't know how to do this yet. I have not found a way to get to exercise yet. I'm not a great public speaker yet, but I'm working towards it. By reframing these, you're practicing your growth mindset.
If we link it a little bit more into the habit creation, something that has often works is the possibility to allocate 1 minute every morning when you wake up, and to constantly repeat the positive message that you want out of your life. If it is about, I want to be successful, and these negative thoughts are preventing me to be successful, and repeating it is like you are putting an image of positivity in your brain, and you are replacing your negative thoughts with something that is more forward-looking, positive. And this is a small exercise that doesn't cost more than 1 minute. Everybody has a 1 minute, right?
Yes, and that actually brings me to the next point, when somebody mentioned that, how do you actually find time? There's these obstacles in the way, but there's no time, no space. Listen, when it comes to implementing new habits, it's about making time. It's about making time, and we don't need to. So when we're looking at starting to exercise, somebody mentioned they want to start exercising every day. It doesn't mean we need to sign up for the gym and go and drive to the gym and go for 1 hour. Not at all. It can be as simple as taking a 10-minute to 15-minute walk every day until that 10 minutes, 15 is not enough. And now you say, I want to do a little bit more. When it comes to exercising, we cannot go full on, especially if you've never exercised before, because what will happen if you start going to the gym 4 or 5 times a week, your muscles are going to be sore. You're going to be like, no, thank you. I'm not doing this. And until you see results, it's going to take time. It's going to be difficult. But if you just start small changes, making time for them. So that means maybe after lunch, your trigger, you had lunch, you had your tea, you're going for a walk, or maybe now it's hot in UAE, but maybe you're saying, maybe I'm going to do some chores. So exercising doesn't have to be going to the gym or joining a class. Exercising could be turning on that YouTube and doing a 10-15-minute yoga. As somebody mentioned, they started yoga for 20 days now, right? It could be something along the lines of those push-ups, those breathing exercises, whatever it has to do with it doesn't have to be this intense exercise routine to start with, because it will be very difficult to maintain. Question for you, Yvonne, and then I want to address the one about focus, because I've struggled with this for most of my life, and Yvonne unfortunately knows this. And I've implemented some things. I'm better. I'm not perfect at it yet, but I'm better. Somebody asked Yvonne about the difference between the brain and the mind. I have my own version of the answer, but I'm curious what you have to say.
The brain is the organ. The organ is producing reactions between electricity and chemical messaging. That's the way the organ is communicating and giving signals about what our body is feeling, or it becomes a little bit more complex when it's like the combination of routines that are made the body to survive. The organ is already producing a little bit more of complexity until it reaches the point where the human being can extrapolate and see himself in the future, which we are, in fact, it seems, the only animal on Earth who is capable to extrapolate himself to the future. The mind, it is that part, the part of being capable of projecting ourselves into the future, having thoughts, which is called the cognition, having thoughts, learning new things, having feelings. All of this is considered the mind. So the organ brain is producing, thanks to the complexity of chemical and electrical reactions, a complex thought that most of animals cannot do, except the human beings, at least on Earth. We don't know still if there is life in other planets. Huh?
Yeah, I always feel the brain is like this thing we can touch, but then the mind is the feelings and the thoughts, and that's what it is. So And somebody asked about the focus. So what has helped me, and I used to be the person who would say I'm great at multitasking. I think it was one of those check boxes on my CV for the longest time, right? So like, I'm great at multitasking. I can do so many things, and I can. Don't get me wrong, but not at the same quality. So by focusing, I actually developed a habit of developing more quality work in what I do. And what worked for me is timing. So usually I would have a long to-do list, and that can be super overwhelming. What I would do is I would write my to-do list, and I would put how many minutes or an hour, 2 hours each task will actually take me. And that does such magic to my mind, because I used to look at my to-do list and it's like, oh my gosh, how can I possibly get all this done? And then I hit that inertia where I'm just stuck because I have such a big thing. So I said, let me implement what we're researching, right? And by writing down and breaking it into 10, 20-minute intervals, essentially looking what I can get done in those times, really, really helped me. So for those of you who have trouble with focus, timing yourself, plugging it into a calendar, literally. Yvonne and I, we're both early risers, but we know in the morning it's our time for our reflection, our reading, our exercising, breathing, etc. So this is we both have this routine, and it's literally maybe even in our calendars to remind ourselves. So that really works quite well.
Elena, at the beginning, this story about planning, timing the task that we are doing takes a little bit of time, but the more you are using it, it's incredible that it can take only 1 minute of your time to time all of the tasks and to select, in fact, the ones that we can be happily living without doing.
Absolutely, and thank you guys for those of you saying thank you for your attention. We're finished now with the time. I know maybe some of you have to go, but I want to address a couple of more questions and then we'll log off. So thank you for joining and thank you for your attention. And somebody asked also, what does my to-do list look like now? So it's still long. Because between Yvonne and I, we're running 2 businesses and also trying to be, have our social life and our wellness life. So the list is long, but it's manageable. It's manageable because I know exactly when I'm going to be doing what, and I've gotten super organized in terms of actually plugging it into my calendar based on priorities and what I need to get done when and how long it will take me. So it's still long, but it's now prioritized, organized, and plugged into my Outlook. And I also use sometimes Trello, but we also have an internal app that Yvonne and I use as well. So, and I think, let's see if there's anything else, see if I have, and those of you who missed the beginning, we will share the recording if you'd like, so just drop us a message. I think, and final question for you, Yvonne, how about that? Somebody said, if a creative person involved in more of a personalized emotional expression, then how would you define this condition, and what do you think about this? Will it help being productive?
Sorry, I didn't understand. Can you
actually
rephrase it?
It says, so if a person is creative, and it's what I think they're doing is that more of their work is about, actually, I don't know, unfortunately. I'm not sure. So whoever asked this, rephrase that for us. I think I know what it means, but I don't want to make assumptions. So I prefer, if you're still online, if you just let us know what is it that you're asking. And Yvonne, you wanted to say something? Sorry.
Yeah, it's just a big suggestion. So as Bessern, we have a lot of resources. We're continuously doing research, and we want to share that with you because you have come to our webinar. So I would suggest that if you want to reach our resources, we have guidebooks, we have access to daily publications regarding self-development, well-being, working on creativity, how to be more productive. And everything is in the website bessern.co/free. So simple to remember, and in there you can find all of these resources. We have an amazing app that you may want to download by reaching our community. Everything is for free. So just big thank you to you, and you deserve to have some resources in order to reach your goals.
Yeah, and I see you guys' questions. So they're really They're really great, but take it offline with us. We're happy to address them. Just mindful of the time, but also, Yvonne, it was the person was referring to being a painter or an artist. So that if we can still be productive, and I understand, because when you are in a creative space, you need to really have that creative mindset. So this is actually where you would go into flow, the state of flow. I think this is what will help.
Let's redefine productivity, especially for people who are creative. Our society has determined that productivity is about the number of efforts and hours that you devote in a single task. Unfortunately, creativity will never work in a framework that is the unit of cost of productivity. So you cannot value productivity for creative people in the same way that you would do in a factory in the early 20s. So this is something that is quite important. More and more, and this is a big revolution at work, is that the more it is possible to replace a human for the ordinary task that can be implemented by artificial intelligence, machine learning, and whatsoever, the more the human should be focusing more into the creative aspect and the empathic aspect that is quite dear to you, Elena, that of communicating and empathizing with other people, socializing, something that machines will never learn. Creativity is something that machines will never learn. So we have to, in fact, to create also habits in order to reinforce our creativity. And is based, but we have to keep in mind that creativity is not something that you can say is not like 20 push-ups per day. It's allocating unstructured time for your brain to wander. That means that to do activities that are as simple as drawing while your brain is wandering, and that makes that your brain becomes more creative. Having social interactions with people who belongs to another type of crowd who are very different than us is something that helps the brain to even further develop. So creativity cannot be measured in the same way as productivity.
Absolutely. I have to answer this last question, Yvonne. I'm sorry. I have to.
No,
it's, all of your questions are. I know you have an engagement to get to, but they're just great, and I think it's so relevant. So somebody also asked that, during this lockdown, many of us are wearing inner masks. So how to constantly motivate myself and others? No one wants to show that they're weak or talk about vulnerability. So how to make them come out of it? From my side, I can say is I think that by being vulnerable and by sharing how we're feeling, depends on what role you're in. So if you're in a management role or if you're in a team lead role where you're having those meetings with your team members on Zoom, maybe taking the first couple of minutes and leading with saying, how is everybody feeling? And even if nobody's answering the first time, maybe just sharing some of the challenges, but maybe some of the positives and negatives of what you've been experiencing. Because when we show vulnerability, people will be more willing to show their vulnerability. It might not happen from the first conversation, from the second, but it will lead the way. It will open that door slowly. So and if you're in a position where you're leading the meeting, I would start off each meeting to say, listen, let's take a couple of minutes and share how we're feeling today, and we're going to jump into the agenda right after. So just to kind of give an example, essentially. Anything you want to add there? No, Ivan? Good?
No, that was perfect for me. I'm a big believer of vulnerability, even if I cannot pronounce it correctly.
Yeah, vulnerability. It took me some time as well. Not native English, that's the problem. So, and for those of you who still have some questions, please feel free to touch base with us online. And there's also somebody who has said that, how do you manage the time at home and trying to do everything? There's a long answer to that, and I would love for you to touch base with me individually, and I would be happy to give you some tips and strategies. But the key is to not have to do everything. So also be kind with yourself as you're going through this. This is not the normal working from home for us. This is working from home because we don't have other choices at the moment. So it's difficult for everybody. So I think it's just also being kind with yourself at this time. But please touch base with us on LinkedIn, on emails, and we'll be happy to, if you still have questions, we'll be happy to address But I think we'll end here.
It was a pleasure, guys. So as Elena said, please touch base with us in LinkedIn. Mainly, if you don't have our emails, we are going to be sharing the presentation. Benefit from the complementary resources that we are offering, so that you can help you out grow in your personal goals. Bessern.co/free. Looking forward for having news from your side. Thank you.
Thank you for your attention. Thank you. Bye-bye.